Okay, Bez Hashem, this is a shiur on Hilchos and Zikin. We're going to start from the beginning and try to talk about some of the fundamental aspects of the Zikin. Let's start with the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Shin Ein Ches Achei Mishpat, Asur lahazik mammon chaveroi. It is forbidden to damage the property of your friend. Ve'im hezikoi afal pi she'einena chayv l'shalem nezik shalem. If someone does do damage to his friend's property, to the money of his friend, even though he did not derive benefit from that damage, meaning as opposed to Gzela, where Gzela and Gneva, where a person derives benefit by the action done. He takes his friend's things and therefore he has it and he derives benefit from it. Nizikin is you smash the guy's car. There's no benefit derived from it whatsoever. Nevertheless, you're chayv l'shalem. The complete payment. Bein shayashek, bein shayonis. I'll discuss as a chiddush Nizikin. There is a chiddush of in a zikin as opposed to most other places in the Torah where even ba'inus, different degrees of inus, we'll discuss, you are chayiv to pay. So there's really two fundamental aspects of an zikin, which we'll focus on. One in the shiur, maybe one in the next shiur, and that is one of them is isser, that there is a isser to do damage to your friend's possessions, and number two is the chiyuv tashlumin. So every hezek, you have to divide really into four categories. There's two categories of the mazik and two categories of the nizak. Two categories of the mazik are adam mazik and b'moinish hezek. Adam mazik is when a person does damage, through his body and extension of his body, koicha, etc. And b'moinish hezek is when things belonging to the person or created by the person. The classic case, the first mission of Bava Kama is shar bar ma'vehever. At a bunch of cases where a person is responsible for the damage which is done by his animals. Now, you also have to differentiate mitzad the nizak, that someone who damages or his animal damages a person, it's very different. When you damage a person, you damage property. A person, you have to clarify, is there any monetary loss over here? Does a person have some sort of monetary worth? Is it a different type of tashlumin? But we're going to focus over here, the Shulchan Aruch focus on over here is the simplest case, which is a person damaging property. So property definitely is something which has monetary value, and a person is definitely responsible for his actions. We'll discuss, einus, different things like that, but a person is responsible for his actions, and the Torah says, Maka behema yishamen, there's a pasuk in Vayikra, Parak Chav Daled, that a few psukim there, that a person who damages the shiur of his friend has to pay. And just an aside, that there's really two aspects to nezek, which we will discuss more at length at a different time, where one of them is that through nezek you damage the actual physical object, and number two is that the value of the object is less based off those hezek. You could have one without the other. Let's say someone has something which is valueless, and I go and smash it. So I just destroyed a physical object without destroying any value. And the other way around, vice versa. There's something called hezek sheninikar. If I make somehow, I make my friend's object asur ba'ana, so the object remains, the physical object remains exactly the same. But right now it's asur ba'ana, it loses all its value, as the Gemara says many places that asur and have no value. So I just did one without the other. So in both of those cases, the way we paskin halacha, you're going to be pater. And the pashtus is, and there's a lot of ramifications, different variations of this. The pashtus is that just like the pasuk maka behema yishalmena, when someone damages a shiur, there's two things: there's the chsaron and the guf hashar, and there's also a hefsid in the shavios. It loses its value. So too, every hezek needs those two components. But the interplay, which one is the key, which one is not, and as we'll discuss more in this year about when it comes to paying back, how we view things. But on a basic level, nezek has those two components. You always need those two components. You need the component of a physical damage and a monetary damage done as well. Okay, so let's talk about the chiyuv tashlumin. The chiyuv tashlumin, the mishnayos in Bava Kama and the pashtos in many places, is that we evaluate the amount you have to pay. Kama hoisa yafa v'kama yafa. When we take a look at the thing that was damaged, the damage that was done, and we take a look at it, and we see how much was it worth before the damage and how much is it worth after the damage, and that's the difference you pay. Okay, as discussed, it's not always so simple, and let's read the Shulchan Aruch Taka passing like that in Shin Pei Zayin. So the Shin Pei Zayin, let's read the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Pei Zayin. Shin Pei Zayin only has one sif. It says like this: Shama the mazik biyada kedaksha shama im hizik mamoina. So just as if the person's shiur does damage, the same din applies when he does damage, and the Shulchan Aruch calls it shaman, which is brought in the Gemara, as opposed to a certain dinim that exists by Gzela and other things, where basically you don't pay the difference. You have to make sure you have to give it back as was. You have to make sure that the nignav or the nigzal has the object in the in this, or the money in the state that it was prior to you getting involved. But in Nizikin, it's not the case. You pay the difference, and you can pay it with different things. So shalom lamazik biyadu kshalom layim hizik l'mayim. Ketzad hareish harg behemas chaveri oishavar kelev. If someone kills his friend's animal or breaks his vessels, shalom kama haisha behemas shava kama nevela shava. We evaluate how much it was worth. The kami and how much it's worth now. The kama haya kli shava who shalom. The kama shava hata. Mishalim pchas lanizik and menavela kli shava kedar she's bar b'shara shizik later on in the Shulchan Aruch. So we evaluate how much it was worth, and evaluate how much it's worth right now as a broken kli or as a dead behema, and we pay the difference. Okay, very simple. And this is actually Makar and Tosafta and a lot of Mishnais. All over Bava Kama, you'll bump into Kama Ha'isa Yaf, Kama Yaf, and that seems to be the simple understanding. So the question is really a twofold question. What happens, all these cases we say, if I kill someone's animal or I break his kli, all those are irrevocable damages, meaning I can't fix it. What happens if I have a hezek which I can fix? What happens then? Meaning, let's say I borrow someone's car, and or let's say better, I scratch someone's car, right? I'm driving, I do something stupid, and I scratch someone's car. So the market value of the car could go way down. On the other hand, it's possible to fix. You do a paint job, it could be expensive, it could be worth a lot more, a lot less. But there's a whole different form of tashlumin that can take place, which is made tikkun. So what's the deal with that? And a corollary of this question is what happens if I fix the mazik, fixes the hezek by myself? Meaning, what happens if I just go and say, look, you want me to pay $100 because of this damage that I did? I just fixed it, so I don't have to pay you anything. What's the deal with that? Okay, so this is actually a very interesting question, a fundamental question, and the mucker for this is really not in a central place in Zik, which makes it very interesting, being that it's a central conceptual and practical halachic point in Zik. The mucker is a little in a far-flung place. Okay, so let's begin. So the Rambam says in Hilchos Tayim V'Nitin, Parakei Halacha Aleph, in Hilchos Tayim V'Nitin, that there's you're not nishba ala karka, right? So there's a din of Ma'id B'Mitzos and Eid Echad, where a person is chayav a shvu on a deraisa level, and the Rambam says there are certain exceptions to the rule, like karka and avadim and stars. There are different exceptions to the rule. Ein nishban aleim. Now Halacha Beis, the Rambam says like this: V'chein ha'choifer b'stei chaveroi boyris shichnum aros. So too, someone who digs within his friend's field, different types of pits. The Gemara, different places always brings these different types of pits, and Rashi explains the different differences between the pits. V'fsidua, and he caused damage to the field. Ayu chayav l'shalim. Bein shetanu shechaf v'rmlei chafarti. Oy shetanu shechaf v'shtei ma'aros v'rmlei chafarti al achas. Oy sheishem eidachot shechaf v'rmlei chafarti klom. Arizin nishba nesas al kol. So Ram says, in such a case where someone did damage to the field, and it's either Moed B'Mitzos or Eid Echad, something which, if it was Metaltalin, there would be a Shvuah Satara. Over here, the Rambam says that you're patur from a Shvuah. And the way people quote the Rambam, they call it Dmei Karka Kakarka, meaning that someone demanding a payment for damage that was done to ground is considered, for whatever reason, like ground. Okay. Now that is a interesting hanacha by itself. It's not relevant to what we're talking about. And there's a famous Reb Chaim about this. There's different discussions about in Hilchos Shavuos what exactly Shitas Rambam is and why that's the case. Okay, but what we want from the Rambam is the Rabbi. So Rabbi says like this. Rabbi says, Amar Avram, Nirin dvarim shetovu l'malas hachafiris lahash v'chatzeres. What the Rambam says, that makes sense if the nizik is teveya the mazik, to fill the chafiris and to smooth out the chatzeres. Meaning, if he's teveya, to fix the actual karka. Meaning, the Rambam says that demanding to being teveya, that, you did damage, being told that you did damage to my field. I'm teveya certain payment for that. The Rabbi says it depends what sort of payment we're talking about. If he demands actual fixing of the gufa karka, then it makes sense what the Rambam says. That's considered tvias karka. I want you to fix the land. So it'll be much more understandable to say why that's tvias karka. However, the Rav continues. If he says just pay me the monetary difference, it's just like an tvias moment. The Rav brings a riot. Okay, so the Ram of the Rav is a famous Ram Ravid, and there's people who talk about it. It's famous for time, but upon him, we see in the Ravid this interesting thing that it's almost like there's two types of tvias. There's a tvias tikkun, and there's a tvias moment. So it sounds like, from the simple reading of the Ravid, that the nizuk has the capacity, when damage is done, to be teveh one of two things. He could say, fix my thing, or pay me this money. And the yad nizuk al yad, and the mazik has to listen to him. Okay, fine. The Maga Mishnah over there in Toiminitim argues with the Ravid. He says like this: the ein hachiluk shekatzav Rav Zal nirin nochain. I don't agree with the whole premise of Ravid. Sharei ein biyad teveh lachriach lenit balamaz afiris elam rasa mishal maniskay v'afseidai. The nizik does not have the capacity, does not have the power to demand that the mazik fix the damage that he did. Hilkoch mali toiva lemali mali toiva b'damim. What difference does it make? Mali toiva lemalas mali toiva b'damim. Since the nizik doesn't have the power to force the mazik to fix it, so it doesn't matter what he claims. The nizik could demand that you fix it, command you pay. It's all the same thing. The Rambam says at the end of the day, it's going to be money because he doesn't have the power to demand anything else. And all of these are considered damim, a chiyuv mamon, which stems from hefsid karka, and it's all the same thing. And then we'll figure out what exactly are we going to hold like the Rambam, hold like the Ravid, whatever the Havana of the Rambam, the Ravid is in regards to Hilchos Shavuos. But the Maggid Mishnah says is that what the Ravid says has no basis. Okay, so the question is, and this is where it gets interesting. There are different understandings of the Maggid Mishnah and the Ravid in the Paskim, and that leads to different understandings of, first of all, the nature of Hezek on a conceptual level, but also Halacha L'Maisa regarding the questions that we raised. Okay, so we'll start with the Mishnah Melech. Mishnah Melech is a very short Mishnah Melech over there, where the Mishnah Melech sort of gives two answers walking back the Ravid. First answer, he says, the Mishnah Melech says like this: Im afar karka oy hu be'ena v'adayin kayim efshi b'yad tevei la'chirech l'nit v'l'malas afiris. The Mishnah Melech says like this: even the Ravid only said his din when the way to fix it is it's possible to fix without any external purchase or something like that. Meaning, I dug up someone's land and all the shovel's still there and the earth is still there, and all I have to do is fill it back up, and I don't have to go to Home Depot and pick up 50 pounds of earth. In that case, the Ravid says that you could do it, that the nizak could be teveya, that the mazik should fix this thing. So the Mishnah Melech says is that this vart that what's it called, that Shisham, this guy, is only that he doesn't have to go and purchase things in order to fix the hazak. So the Mishnah Melech makes a distinction. It says if it's possible without any external purchases to go and fix the hazak, then he could do it. If not, no. Okay. So it's interesting because he basically walked back to the Ravid. Before the Maggid Mishnah the premise of the Maggid Mishnah is arguing with the whole Yisrael of the Ravid that you could force the mazik to do anything to fix it. So even though this is a lesser degree of fixing it, meaning it's a more makeldika case where a fixing where you're not forcing the mazik to go out and buy all the supplies and then fix it. It seems like the Maggid Mishnah would argue anyway. And Be'emes the Tumim in Choshen Mishpat Tzaddik Siv Zion says on the Mishnah Melech that he just wrote this without any Raya V'tam. Fine. Now, another interesting thing against what the Mishnah Melech, the distinction the Mishnah Melech is saying, and Nidche La'alacha, it's not about La'alacha, is, some people bring it La'alacha, I sort of Zalman Nechemia Goldberg brings it La'alacha, but it's there's a lot of poskim who just throw out the Mishnah Melech. So, the Rimigash in Shittu Huetzas in Bava Metzia, Daf Hey, brings a very similar shita to the Ravid. Meaning the Ravid said his din nasagus, and I forgot to say he also says it in the Shittu Huetzas in Bava Metzia. I'll just read the Shittu Huetzas, the Ravid Shittu Huetzas Bava Metzia. He says the Ikal Lemeimar, the end of what he says at the end, Ikal Lemeimar, the loy tav minei dmei hezek hafiris ela sheyachzer v'yimale oison v'umoyd lo sheyimale. So he says the Ravid says in the Shittu Huetzas the same idea that we're talking about, whatever the case in the Gemara is over there, that he's being teveya the work that he should fill the chafiros, and the mazik agrees to him. By the way, there's a key component that is added in this Ravid, which is humaydalai. He agrees that he'll fill them up. Sorry, humaydalai is relevant to the Gemara over there, which is talking about different types of maydav mixos. Fine. So Nachamal, Akopanim, we have the Ravid and Shukabesa. So I was going back to the Mishnah Melech. The Mishnah Melech says about the so the Rimigash brings something similar to the Ravid, and he says like this. He says he explicates the shita like this. Mishum delava money katam el tekuna ba'alma. He's not demanding money. He's just demanding a fixing of the thing. Demasma dechina sakin lu lahanu bayris going to icy Africa malenu. When he fixes these burrs through bringing afar and filling it up. Inami yahu afar grufrei dinafik minayu. Alternatively, he fills it up with that afar that's already there. So we see the Rimigash, at least in one answer, the Rimigash rejects this and explains like the Rambam. But upon him, we see that at least in one answer, the Rimigash doesn't have a problem with saying that you're bringing afar. Although in the second answer, it sounds like the Mishnah Melech, what the Rimigash is doing in the second answer is what the Mishnah Melech is doing in the second answer, which is walking it back. Upon him, the poskim don't really bring the Mishnah Melech. Fine. So there's a second answer with the Mishnah Melech where he says that this Ravid is talking about something else entirely. Second answer, Mishnah Melech says like this: Inami, Afshel Farish, the Chaver Bashichanum Aris, Lutzarchai, the His, the Email of Alaisam, Vala Kaifer Bemixas Viduk. Meaning that we're not talking about a hezek, but rather there was a business agreement over here, and that's what they're arguing about. And meaning he hired a contractor to do certain things, and they're arguing about the details of that. In which case we can't derive anything linyan nizikin. We're not talking about nizikin. However, the Ravid in Shitung Betzas, I read earlier from Ometzia, is clearly not like that. We're just talking about Hezek Lafiris, where Mazik comes and digs it. So Mishnah Melech has a good vart where we could sort of take this Ravid and say this whole Ravid is irrelevant. Lagabe, Hilchas Nizikin, and Tashum Nizikin. However, the Ravid in Shitung Betzas comes and clarifies what he means in Masages and is clearly talking about Hezek. Okay, so we're back to where we started in the sense that we have a Rambam, which is talking about something else entirely. We have a Ravid, which seems to say that there's two options that Nizik has in his arsenal. He could demand that you fix it, or he could demand payment. Fine. And the Mag Mishnah rejects one of them. He says just payment. There's nothing to do with fixing it. The Mishnah Melech tried walking it back. The Rimigash answers like that in one of his answers, and another answer he tried removing it from the whole sugya of Nizikin. But the Mishnah Melech, that's what he tries doing. Fine. Weiter. So the Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Tzadik Hayis Vav in Hilchos Tevinitim brings the Mechaber brings the Shittas Rambam, and the Rambam writes V'yesh Omer Dav Kishatavul Malas Chafiros Avim Tavul L'Shalom Pilchsoi Arizik Kishar Tviyas Moment. So the Rambam brings Shittas Ravid, and the Shach over there in Sivkat Yuchas passes like the Ravid. And here this is the Lashon Shach, and he writes two Biyurim in Shittas Ravid, which would be very relevant. Ladin the Shach will be the first of. We'll have three understandings of the Ravid from the Shach, the Tum, and the Chazon Ish. All of them are to some degree taken lehalacha. Okay, so the Shach says like this: Vani Omer Mashkas Shrei Ein Biyad Teveya Lachriach Lenitba Lamalos Lechafiris Chener Mediver Randel El Mediver Mukiyosef Parakam Damitzia Leidai Tibnalahu. So he brings the Shittas Rav Magid and Ran and Mukiyosef. Other people hold the Mag Mishnah and say that you can't force the mazik to fill to fix the damage that he did. He said the Rishach says, I don't know where they get that from. The Avagav, the Kaimalon, the Kaman, Simishim Peizayin, the Shom and the Mazik. Even though we said what we read earlier from the Shulchan Aruch in Simishim Peizayin that we evaluate Shom, we evaluate how much the damaged items are, and we calculate the difference. So the Shach says the important line, you could argue, and the Shach does argue, that whole din is only when it's impossible to reverse the damage. It's impossible to fix. Someone totaled your car. Someone killed your animal, shaved your kalim, and it's impossible to fix. In which case, we evaluate, what it is for scrap metal, and you pay the difference. But where Efshel Asaka in the Shach says, So the Shach says it makes sense that mistaber l'sakin. Okay, let's not forget the Ravid. The Shach sort of just says that seems to be the original option. However, the Ravid, the way Ravid said it, sounds like the Nizak has the option, which could be an afkamin, as we'll talk about in a second. The Shach says another answer. Va'afilu tema she'ein chayv. Even when you're going to agree, you're going to say that that the Maggid Mishnah is correct, and you cannot force the Nizak. The Nizak cannot force the Mazik to fix it. Nevertheless, he explains she does arrive it. Mikol das arrive in the chayna. Mikol also the hecha the efshar l'malas chafiras. Va'af sheina chayv l'shalom elodamim. Mikol makom vada b'damim she'itin loy yimalach chafiras. Im kein tvias karkahi. He says in regards to Hilchos Shavuos, the Rav is correct because since it's in a case where it's possible to fix, therefore even though you pay damim, and those damim will be pashtos evaluated kama hayafa v'kama hiyafa. Nevertheless, what will the nizik do with that? He'll run out and he'll hire someone to go and fix the damage to his field. And therefore, even if you give him money, even if you give him cash, it doesn't make a difference. We know where that cash is going. That cash is going straight back into his damaged field to fix it up. And therefore, the Shach is saying is that we have to. It's a little bit of a chudish like a reading in the Ravid. He's saying that the Ravid is saying that when if teveil shalom pilsa, it doesn't mean that the nizik has the capacity to do that, and he's demanding that labor or the value of that labor, as we'll talk about. Rather, it's talking about where the hechatims of the case, where it's possible to fix. In which case, even if he demands money, it's going to be sunk straight into the field. However, when the Ravid says if he demands that he fills his loss, what's the Havana? Gonshi afshal masach afiris. Gonshi shat v'nar. Chagavna. Abavadim shasar v'eved. Hargo is arkoliyam. Adukati liyade. Chagavna. He said the case where l'sham bichsa is where it's impossible to fix. In which case, the money is obviously just going straight into his bank account and not fixing the hezek because you can't fix the hezek. In a case where, let's say, damaged the field, and then a river came and flooded the whole field. Or in a case of Avadim, where chopped off the Evid's hand and then the Evid was killed. So the Shach's second answer walks back his vart. The Shach's first answer is saying passing like the Ravid Halacha that you could be teveya the nizik could be teveya the mazik to fix it, or the value thereof, meaning he could say. The mazik doesn't have to go and fix it himself. He could pay a contractor to do it, but it'd be the value of fixing the object. And the second answer, the Shach walks it back. He says he gives a nice answer for Hilchos Shavuos about why the Ravid is correct in the sense why it's considered when it's considered the Mei Karka, when it's considered metaltalin in regards to Hilchos Shavuos. But that throws out the Ravid vis-a-vis our discussion of Tashlumin. So according to the first answer, the Ravid Shach, he also the Ravid. According to the second one, it's Kama Yafa. Fine. Now the Shach in Shimpei Zayin says like this: the short Shach. The Shach says he writes like the Teretz Ala, his first answer, and he says Hadam Rina the Shama Kama Hishava Kama Hishava Nira Dahainu She'ein After Lasakna Kli Avalim After Lasakna Mechli of Amazim Sakni. So he shows him in Shimpei Zayin like his first answer in Tzadik, and that's how people take Ladina. A lot of places can take the Shach. Shitas HaShach is that you can the Nizak can demand from the Mazik to fix it, and the Mazik doesn't have to fix himself. He could give the Nizak the value of fixing it, but it will be a different number than the difference in value. So let's just think about this for a second, because it could really go either way. Let's say, for example, you have certain hazekim where the value of the thing doesn't really go down so much. Let's say a little scratch on the car. It depends what sort of car it is. If it's a Lamborghini, so it could be that it's devalued $50,000 and it costs $5,000 to fix. If it's some sort of cheaper car, then it could say that the book value, the market value didn't change at all. It has dents in it already. Another scratch doesn't mean anything. If you wanted to fix this specific scratch, then that would cost money. It would cost $50. So based on Shitas HaShach Halacha, it would sound like Yad HaNizak Al Alyana, he could demand whichever one he wants. Okay. So the Chazon Ish in Bava Kama Siman Vav Skatan Gimel, who has his own shita, but when he comments on the Shach, and he says that according to the understanding of the Shach, that it goes after the Mei Tikkun, then what happens? He says, what happens if at the time of hezek, um, it will cost $5 to fix it, and then labor became cheaper, and at the time of Hamad Bedin, it only costs $1 to fix it. So the Chazon Ish says, according to the Shach, it's all about fixing the chayfetz. We don't care how you get there; it's about fixing the chayfetz, and the money you're giving is the equivalent to fixing how much it costs to hire someone to fix it. So, according to the Shach, if labor gets cheaper, more expensive, we go after Shas Hamad Bedin and not after Shas Hezek. And the Chazon Ish is going to argue, but that Al Kapanim, that is Shittas Shach. Okay. The Tumim in Sukkot and Zayin over there, passing like the Magid Mishnah, and he says that the Shach argues on the Magid Mishnah without any raya. So the Tumim says like this: he's made in one key component to the idea of fixing something. The Tumim says like this: what if the mazik wants to fix it? Meaning he rejects the Shittas Arrived as understood by the Shach L'Halacha, that it's Nizik's choice, dealer's choice, where the Nizik has the capacity to either say, pay me the differentiation of value, or pay me how much it costs to fix, and how much it costs to fix. So the Tumim rejects that, but he does agree on one important component. He says, if the Mazik wants to fix it, then you can't force him to pay. You can't force the Mazik to pay. So explain Shittas Arrived as saying that that since what's it called? It's not a clear metalton case. If he wants, he could fix it, and there's no tefiyas damim. As opposed to, let's say, something which is impossible to fix, let's say chavala, where it's just chavala classically is kata yadei sima ena shiras ragloi, permanent damages. We'll talk more when we discuss chavalas adam, but the classic case of chavala is permanent damage done to the human body, and that is impossible to fix. In which case, obviously, the tefiyah is mumly. So the Tumim says a very interesting point. He says like this. He says that even though that I, the Tumim, reject the idea of the Nizak having the capacity to be Teveya from the Mazik to fix it. Nevertheless, I agree that the Mazik has the right to fix it, and if he fixes it, there's no chiyuv whatsoever. So the Tumim holds that be'emes there's a chiyuv is not tikkun. The chiyuv is not tikkun. The chiyuv is mammon, and the valuation of that will be the value of kama yaffe. However, the Mazik, the Tumim agrees that the whole yesod of the chiyuv, why do I owe you these $100? Because I did this damage. If I get rid of this damage, the damage is gone, and therefore the chiyuv is gone. So the Tumim continues. So he also says something interesting about the second answer of the Shach, where he says the Shach, which also just interesting idea as well in regards to this. He says the Shach says that definitely in the second answer of the Shach, he says that if you pay money to the Nizik, he's definitely used to fix it. The Tumim says, who says who? Maybe he'll take the insurance money and run. Just because when someone's business burns down and he gets the insurance money, not necessarily is he running to rebuild the business with that money. That's not necessarily the case. Maybe the opposite. In fact, he's moving down to Florida. So the Tumim says, in that one line, to me Hinvi, who says that's the case? So it's just interesting from the Tumim that besides for the etzem fact that the chiddush of the Tumim, that's a chiyuv moment, and nevertheless he's moida that the chiyuv stems from the hezek that was done, and if I get rid of the hezek, then the chiyuv moment disappears. There's two interesting points come out of the Tumim as well, where the Tumim is mechalik in the two things he said between niskei mamonei and niskei gufa, because in later on above Kama and Daf Behem at Aleph, there's someone who's chayvel person is chayiv nezek tsar riboy shavas boishes, right? He's chayiv nezek damages, tsar pain, sheves, wages, which is calculated somehow, riboy doctor bills, and boishes embarrassment. So when it comes to riboy, the Gemara says and peham at Aleph at the bottom, he says that if the mazik says, I will heal you, I'm a doctor, and I'll heal you. So the nizar could say, it could politely decline, and he could say, Damasalakai Arbu, you are, when I look at you, I see a lion waiting in ambush, meaning you just hurt me, you just damaged me. You say you're a doctor, you're going to fix me. I don't trust you, I don't feel comfortable around you. I want money, and I'll get my own doctor. I'm sorry, I want my own doctor. Fine. Should we see the Tumim says, just makes the distinction. He says that's only by refuah, but by regular hezek, the hezek bamain, the mazik could do it, which is a chiddush because you can make the argument, I don't want the mazik. This guy just smashed my car. I don't want him. He says I'm a mechanic, right? I'm gonna fix your car for you. You can make the argument, I don't want him fooling around with my car. I don't trust him on this. And lichatchila, but that makes sense. But the Tumim says that the matzah could affect it, which is a chiddush. It's a chiddush, meaning he makes this distinction between chavala and niskei mamoina. Another distinction that is implicit in the Tumim is that the Gemara over there continues when it's going through the different types of refuah claims that could happen. If the nizik says, "Give me the money and I'll deal with my own refuah," instead of them, hiring a doctor. Sorry, instead of the mazik hiring a doctor, so the mazik could say, you'll run through all the money. And he said, then what if the nizik claims that Nechbal claims says, just give me a set amount of money and you won't have to give any more. So the mazik could tell him, he says, you're going to go through the money and you're going to stay sick. And you walk around, people look at you and say, what a shmo, the mazik is, because he didn't heal him. Now, and I gave you the money. So therefore, we're going to hire a third party, a doctor, and he's going to heal you. So it's clear from the Tumim is saying that by nezek of niskei mamoin, that's not the case. He says that you don't have to go and fix the nizek doesn't have a chiyuv to go fix the thing that was damaged. He could take the money and just do whatever he wants with it. As opposed to refuah, the person has to, the nizak has an obligation to be healed as well, not just take the money and run. And this distinction is, mavur in the Rishon of different places that a person, let's say someone damages an animal, Tosfos in Bava Kama Daf Lamed Gimel, there's stirs in different Tosfos, but Tosfos in Bava Kama Lamed Gimel says that by someone's mazik an animal, only nezik is shayach. There's no such thing as ripui shavas, baishas, and sar. And Tosfos goes through them. And Tosfos says ripui is not shayach because you don't have to heal the animal; you can just sell the animal. So without getting into that Tosfos, we see there's a distinction between spending the money of the mazik to fix a monetary thing and fixing a person. So Al Kapanim, just a sikkim of the Shitas Tumim, is interesting in the sense that he rejects the aside of the Rav and the Shach in the idea of that you could be teveya demei tikkun. However, he is maida that the whole chiyuv mammon stems from the physical hezek which was done. If the mazik, first of all, has the right to fix the hezek, which is a chiddush, but also if he fixes the hezek, then the chiyuv mammon disappears. Okay. Then we have the Chazon Ish. So the Chazon Ish is interesting. The Chazon Ish starts off by saying Midas Nafshe. He says something very similar to the second answer of the Shach, where he makes a distinction. He says we look at the thing, the damage thing. You say if this is something where it's normal for someone to fix it, so then you pay Demei Tikkun. If it's normal for this thing not to be fixed but be sold as is, then it's that's what you pay, which is a good distinction. And the Chazon Ish is, he goes back and forth about this thing, and this is his maskana. So the Chazon Ish holds that first of all, how much you pay is dependent upon what's normal to do in such a scenario. Meaning, is it normal b'chai gavna to fix a thing or to sell the thing? And if it's Dmei Tikkun, you pay Dmei Tikkun. If it's Dmei Mechira, you pay Dmei Mechira. Now, another interesting point in the Chazon Ish says is that he brings from other Rishonim who argue with the Ravid, and they say the whole yesod of Tashlumei Mammon, of Tashlumei Nezikin, is a Chiyuv Mammon. And even though what started off this whole chiyuv was the fact that I destroyed it. I was mazig a certain chayfetz. Nevertheless, once I'm chayiv. B'shas hezek, there's a certain chiyuv. That chiyuv is whether it's dmei tikkun or um, mechira, how much it went down for mechira. That is all a shuma. But I have an absolute chiyuv mamun at that time, and therefore he rejects both the premise of the shach and the premise of the tumim. He rejects the premise of the shach that what the Chazon Ish from Dag of the shach earlier, that if labor costs fluctuate, then then how much you have to pay would fluctuate. And the Chazon Ish says, even though I agree that in some cases you'll be paying Dmei Tikkun and not the difference in the Shavios, nevertheless, I hold that it's Chiyuv Mammon, and that doesn't change it. Just what was B'Shas Hezer. He also rejects the Tumim's part and says, even if the Mazik goes and fixes the thing, it's not Masalik the thing. It's not Masalik the Chiyuv, and you're still have to pay the money. And so, okay, so we have three Shitas Lamaskana. You have the Shach, the first answer to the Shach, which is brought Ladin and Shepei Zayin, which is that the Nizik has the capacity to be Teveya, Dmei Tikkun, or Tikkun. Pashas would agree to the Yisod of the Tumim that if it's the Mazik went and fixed it, that it works. Not necessarily would agree to the Vart of the Tumim, the Mazik has the right to do that. It sounds more like from the Shach, like the simple reading of the Ravid, where it's a Tala in the Nizak. But he definitely would agree that if the Mazik went and fixed the whole Haskalah to be Yisod Chiyuv, then all bets are off and everything's fine. The Tumim says that it's not Tikkun, it's Damim, but he agrees that the Chiyuv is dependent upon where it came from, and it came from the Hezek that I did, and therefore if I get rid of the Hezek, somehow, if I fix the Hezek, then therefore I have no Chiyuv Mammon either. And furthermore, he argues that the Mazik has the right to claim that I want to fix it. And the Chazon Ish says that we look at the situation. We look at the situation, is this something normal? Is this something normal to, what's it called? Is this something normal to fix, or something normal not to fix? And we pay based on that. And he rejects the premise of the Shach and the Tumim. He says that the price doesn't fluctuate based off labor costs, and also he says that fixing it doesn't do anything. In Yadina, different poskim passing different things, but all these to some degree, you'll find major poskim who say like these different shitas as well as a mix of all of them. Now, just to finish off with one thing, there's a lot of other dinim which are connected to this. I was to just discuss one other one, not completely, which is what happens if through the fixing of something, it's not going to be completely fixed. So let's say I total someone's car, not total. Let's say I break someone's car, the transmission, the steering, something, and let's say it costs. Let's say we'll go to the shach. The shach says, okay, it costs $3,000 to fix. So I'm not a mechanic. I take it to a mechanic, pay the money, whatever. Not take it to the mechanic. That's a separate discussion. Who has to schlep around? But I give the money. Let's say $3,000. The car is fixed, but it's not fixed. It still rattles. It's still this. Accelerates funny. What's the deal? So 1 foot. Soloveitchik says that if you look at the Ravid says that it says this case only in a case of Afar, where you could fill up the ground and smooth it out and look exactly as it did before, and the damage is not discernible. And the Nucha Shlema, the Rishon Arbach, paskins similarly and says that has to be fixed in a way where it's completely fixed. But this touches on, there's other sheets we didn't mention in other discussions about when it comes to Tashlumin, do I have to, is the whole idea to pay a monetary difference or to replace the object, which is a similar but slightly different clicker than what we discussed. And the Michal Shlema seems to be going in that. But Akopanim, we see that Shlomo Zalman Auerbach paskins that when it comes to fixing it, you have to fix it entirely.